Realm 4. When should I start looking at practices or locations for my practice? When should you start looking for practices to buy or locations for your future practice? If you need to ask me that, maybe you want to reevaluate how much you really want early ownership. From my personal experience and from conversation with my other early ownership peers, we definitely have this one thing in common. We were all evaluating potential practices incessantly, almost from the very beginning of dental school. Even if you are a D1 and you are evaluating practices that won't be on the market once you graduate, you are still honing a valuable skill. Like a grandmaster who studies mid-game chessboards, you are training your eye to understand what good and bad looks like in the dental market. Who is more prepared to accurately evaluate a dental practice? The D4 who is looking at his first practice a month before he graduates? Or the D4 who has looked at 200 or 300 different practices and startup locations over the past several years? Need I say more? I had the name selected for my practice, the logo fully designed, and had purchased multiple variations of my web domain by my second year in dental school. I attained pre-approval for my startup loan before I even had a dental license. When I state these things, it's not to brag. It is to simply establish framing. As a student of the practice biopsy philosophy, there is nothing in dentistry you want more than to own a successful practice. Everything else is simply a distraction. Starting up. If you want to do a startup straight out of school, you are going to have at least somewhat of a delay. A bank is highly unlikely to actually distribute funds to you and begin any sort of project construction before you graduate. You'll have to work as an employee dentist for at least a year or so while your startup project is underway. Ensure that you don't sign a contract with any restrictions prohibitive to your success. For example, restrictive covenants that exclude you from working as a dentist within the radius you intend to own. An unreasonably high notice period is also something to watch out for. Some contracts may ask you to give 6 months' notice before you can depart. Under idyllic circumstances, you will actually be able to keep your employee job during the initial phases of your startup. Even the most successful dental startups can take a while to ramp up to full-on sustainability, and you may need secondary income in the meantime. In the early days of my startup, I worked 3 days per week at my office and 3 days per week at my employee job. Later, this switched to 4 days and 2 days, and finally, full-time at my own practice. This entire transition was under a year in time. You can avoid this if you have a working spouse with significant income, or you have a nest egg of savings that can carry you through the early growth phase of your business. You should expect at least a couple months before the good money starts rolling in. Note, the average dental startup takes a year or 2 to become profitable enough for the owner to take a solid paycheck, sometimes even longer. High performers can usually take a solid paycheck after 1 to 3 months. Which category will you fall into? The category you fall into depends entirely upon how meticulously and strategically you prepare yourself. This shouldn't be a guess. This should be a strategically executed plan. Buying a practice. Unlike doing a startup, you can typically buy a practice straight out of school. I've had peers who have done this. If not straight out of school, perhaps within several months, with foresight and again the magic words, a strategically executed plan. This is very reasonable. If you want to buy a practice straight out of school, you'll be spending lots of your time networking with dentists, brokers, and your dental attorney to put a deal together. When we are discussing practice acquisitions, notice I am recommending that you may buy a dental practice, not buy into a dental practice. There is an extensive article on this topic that you will find on practicebiopsy.com. You'll find that article in entry number 24. I'll let you take that on as independent reading. To make a long story short, Buy a practice from someone who is ready to sell, not from someone who might be ready to sell 3 years from now. You want control of your business. You want control of your time. It's why you've prepared yourself so long and so hard for this moment. Where are you going to live? This question is one of the largest barriers to speed that most of you are going to deal with. When I talk to many dental students or even dentists who want to own a practice, they often tell me they can't because they don't know where they want to live. They don't know if they want to live in the Midwest, the East Coast, West Coast, or South. They don't know if they want to live near this city or that city. And this indecisiveness can be their downfall, at least in terms of time efficiency. If you don't know where you want to settle down to open your practice, you really can't even start the process of taking the actions to actually make this happen. What you can do is continue learning the fundamentals of business, refining the skeleton of your business plan, and so on. But a dental practice is a business fixed in one location. You need to decide which cities you'd be comfortable living in or near in order to best achieve your personal success and happiness. This matter speaks to a great issue of being decisive. As a business owner, one of the most important soft skills in your arsenal is the ability to be decisive. If you can't decide where you want to live, or at least narrow it down to a top 3 places, then maybe you truly aren't ready to be a business owner. As a business owner, you're going to be making decisions on an almost daily basis that have permanent and long-term ramifications. Where you want to live is one of those decisions. I'll leave that one up to you, boss.